Hello, biologists. Today we're going to talk about vertebrates. There are about 62,000 species of vertebrates. These vertebrates are going to be deuterostomes, which means that the mouth forms second during the gastrula phase. They are coelomates, meaning that they have a body cavity. They're going to have three things that we think of as part of the spine and the spinal cord. So it's a vertebral column, a notochord, and a dorsal hollow nerve cord. At some point during development, they're going to have pharyngeal slits that will develop into gills if gills are present, or will go away if gills are not present. They're going to have a post-anal tail that may or may not stay. And later, they're going to have a skull, which we call a cranium. Here we have our giant phylogenetic tree, deuterostomes being the most basal character, moving our way up to the most advanced characters, which are going to be mammals. We're going to talk about all these groups except for the first three, because the first three are invertebrates, but everybody else here is going to get discussed today. Our first class is the Agnatha, A being doesn't have, and Natha referring to jaw. So these are the jawless fish. We have two. We have hagfish. Hagfish are amazing. There's about 70 species. They're eel-like because they do not have fins, so they're shaped like a snake or a worm. They don't have true eyes, but they do have eye spots, and the eye spots can sense light, but they don't have a lens or a cornea. They're going to have a skull made of cartilage, and they're going to have no true jaw. Instead, they're going to have plates inside of their mouth that are reversible. So here you can see this hagfish is not sticking its plates out. Here it is sticking its plates out. And so these plates have teeth and they rub it against whatever they're eating. They're usually scavengers. And so they're going to be rubbing those plates against decomposing fish or shark or whatever is dead at the bottom of the ocean. When they want to escape predators, they are going to tie themselves into knots and emit a ton of slime, like really high quantities of slime. Another jawless fish, Agnatha, are the lampreys. You're going to focus on lampreys in one of the labs, so you'll learn more about them. They're really important culturally, so really cool critters. We have about 40 species of these. They do live in our area. We have the Pacific Northern lamprey. Here we have a fun article title about our lamprey. And these lamprey, again, no true jaws. Instead, they have these circular mouths that work like suckers. It takes them somewhere between 3 and 5 years to become sexually mature. Before they're sexually mature, they're about the size and shape of an eyelash, and they sit in the bottom of a body of water, usually like a river, and they just passively feed whatever goes past them. So we call them suspension feeders. They often have a parasitic phase. So they'll take that sucker mouth and they'll pop it onto the side of a fish and they will suck the fish juice. But they're really, really fantastic creatures and awesome to see in our area. If you ever go to Bonneville Dam during migration season, you can see these in the fish ladder. This is actually a picture of the lamprey from Bonneville Dam, and they are just gorgeous. Now we're going to have fish that actually have jaws. So gnathostomes, these are going to be our jawed fish. We're going to have a couple different types. First, we're going to have class chondroichthyes. Ichthyes refers to fish. Chondro means cartilage. So these are our cartilaginous fish. This is going to be sharks, skeets, and rays. They do not have skeletons made of bone. Instead, their skeletons are made of cartilage. These are the dominant predators of the ocean. They have two paired fins, and they have that powerful tail. They do have bony teeth. They're one of the first critters to have true bony teeth. There's about 1,000 species. And I want to take a moment to talk about sharks because they're so cool. Sharks have an incredible sense of smell, but not only that, they have the ampulla of Lorenzini, which helps them detect electromagnetic fields, so they can always tell which way is north and orient themselves. They also have a lateral line, which goes down the side of their body, and fish have this too, but it helps them detect vibrations in the water so they can feel if something is moving behind them without ever seeing it. Now, sharks need to constantly move. The reason they need to constantly move is because they have no neutral buoyancy. So they have to be propelling forward to keep their body from sinking. So if they just stop moving, they would sink. They're not net neutral buoyancy. And they also need to have water constantly running over their gills, or they won't be able to breathe. So they never stop swimming. Here we have a tiger shark, and then this is a hammerhead shark. The tiger shark is often called a garbage eater because it will eat any trash that is just thrown in the ocean. So another reason to keep our ecosystems clean is because we don't want tiger sharks eating tires. In sharks, they're going to reproduce 3 different ways, and they're wonderfully complex. The first is oviparous. In oviparous, you're going to lay eggs, and they're going to hatch outside the mother's body, and they're going to have little egg cases that protect the developing embryo called mermaid's purses. So that's the egg option. Or you can have a live option where you have an egg, it's viviparous, but then the egg becomes attached to the female oviduct, and it actually gets nutrients directly from the mother, just like mammals do. And when baby sharks are born in this system, they're born fully alive and ready to go, just like a baby deer is born standing up and ready to run. These little sharks swim away from their mother. And then we have a combination of both. So this is ovoviviparous. This is where you have an egg and it's retained in the oviduct, but it's kept separate. So instead of directly getting the nutrients from mom, like in viviparous, ovoviviparous is going to get the nutrients from the egg sac, from the yolk, and develop inside the mother, but then leave the mother as if it was developed from the mother. It will be fully alive and functional. Weirdly, this combination of both egg and developing in the mom is the most common. All right, in our jawed fish, we also have our osteoichthyes. Osteo refers to bone, so these are our bony fish. They have an ossified skeleton, and they also have a swim bladder. That swim bladder allows them to maintain net neutral buoyancy, so they don't sink if they stop moving. There's about 30,000 different species. We have 2 classes. We're going to have ray-finned fish, which is everything we think of as a true fish: tuna, bass, trout, salmon, etc. And then we're going to have the lobe-finned fish. These are lungfish. They're really interesting. Let me show you these. In the past, we had this fossil that kind of explained how we went from a fish to a tetrapod. Tetrapods have 4 legs. This is what we think the fossil might have looked like. It was called Tiktaalik, and we think it was the transition between a lobe-finned fish and an amphibian. We think this is what got humans in evolutionary time out of the water, everyone out of the water, because it was able to leave and stand on these little flippers. It looks like it could do a buff little push-up. This is cool because lobe-finned fish actually can breathe air. So they can get their little bodies out of the water and breathe air like other organisms can, like amphibians and reptiles can, and then go back. So a neat transition to having legs. And I have a reading recommendation for you. This book by Neil Shubin, Your Inner Fish, is all about the journey to understand the Tiktaalik fossils and what they meant for our evolutionary history. Really cool. Our first tetrapods, tetra being 4, pods for feet, are going to be amphibians. Amphibians are terrestrial, but they're still tied to the water, and they do a large component of their life cycle fully in water. So they cannot exist without water, and they're not fully terrestrial yet. They have cutaneous respiration. Cutaneous means skin, so they breathe right through their skin. Some have lungs, some have gills. It's really dependent on what type of amphibian we're discussing. Their eggs have to be laid in water, and they go through metamorphosis in water. So here we have a single egg. You can see a little tadpole developing, then a tadpole hatches. It will continue to be a tadpole for a while until the legs develop. We call these a polywog. Then you'll see the tail shrinking as the legs get larger until at the end you are a tailless amphibian frog. So this is why they're called amphibians. Amphibian means dual life, part terrestrial, part fully aquatic. There's about 6.7 thousand species, and they have really effective color vision eyes. Here we have a really cute red-eyed tree frog. In the amphibians, we're going to have three main groups. We're going to have the salamanders. Some have gills, some have lungs. They're going to use internal fertilization. Unlike frogs, frogs are going to have external fertilization, and their body plan is changed and designed for jumping. So see these little finger pads that help it hold on. And we're also going to have the legless amphibians. These look kind of like snakes, but they're not reptiles. This is interesting because it lost their legs, so it's a reversal. Now, beyond our amphibians, we're going to have amniotes. Amniotes as a class have mostly extinct groups. Everything that is folded is going to be something that is extant. So in this group, we have our mammals. We also have snakes and lizards, turtles, crocodiles, and then down here, birds. But all these other ones, these are all extinct lineages. So what is an amniote? Amniotes are a group of animals where the eggs are protected by the amniotic membrane. Here is an egg, like a chicken egg. We have the shell on the outside. Then we have a protein layer, that's albumin. Then inside, you're going to have the yolk, which nutrients supply for the embryo. Here's the embryo. And then developing embryo is protected by an amnion. That's the amniotic membrane. And then inside here is the amniotic fluid. That probably sounds familiar because we have amniotic fluid too inside of human placentas. And we'll talk about placentas later. But this system protects and nourishes the developing embryo in the egg. Now in amniotes, we're going to divide them into three groups based on how many holes they have in their bones. Specifically, their temporal. Temporal is a location on the skull. So here we have a skull. This is where your eye would go. That's your eye socket. Then this is your temporal bone right here. And here is a hole. They call holes in the skull fenestra. Fenestra means window. So it's a little hole. They can be big, they can be small, depending on your organism. We have some that have no temporal fenestra. Those are turtles. And if you put an A in front of it, that means no. So napsid refers to those temporal fenestra. We have some that have a single hole. Those are going to be mammals. And we have some that have two. Those are going to be birds and reptiles. Our reptiles and birds together are going to be in two main groups. They're all going to be tetrapods, except snakes. They're going to have scaly skin, and they're either going to be warm-blooded or cold-blooded. If they're cold-blooded, their body temperature is dependent on the environment, so their blood isn't cold. They just don't maintain a constant temperature like we do. We call those ectotherms. Therm for heat and ecto for outside. If you are an endotherm, that's internal heat, you have a constant body temperature, like ours is 98.6. In our reptiles, we're going to have two big groups here and then another. So crocodilia, that's going to be alligators and crocodiles and caimans. And then in this other group here, we're going to have tataras. There's two species left. They're both found in New Zealand. They have no external ears, which is interesting. And when they're developing, they have a third eye right in the middle of their forehead. It gets covered with skin, so they don't maintain that eye, but you can see it when they're young. And they're a really interesting type of lizard, but not technically a lizard. So they're in their own group. Then we have our lizards and snakes. Lizards and snakes are the largest group of reptiles, very diverse. They're found everywhere except Antarctica. And my favorite is the testudines. That's going to be the turtles. So here I have a picture of me with a Galapagos tortoise in the Galapagos Islands. This is probably about 150 years old and like 500 pounds. So really big tortoises. Tortoises have a shell, and the shell is part of their skeleton. So you can't take the shell off. It's actually composed of their ribs and their vertebrae. The top part is called the carapace. You heard that word before when we were talking about invertebrates. It's the same for the shell of a crab or a shrimp. And then plastron is going to be the bottom part of the shell that holds in all their viscera. Now, birds are closely related to reptiles. They are endothermic. Reptiles are ectothermic. And birds have modifications for flight. Even penguins that can't fly have modifications for flight. Even emus and ostriches that cannot fly. Those modifications include feathers. So the feathers are similar to scales, but increase surface area. They have hollow bones. They have really efficient respiration. So they have a unidirectional respiration tract, which your book talks about. And then their sternum is shaped like a keel. This is what a keel looks like. And the idea behind this is it's a huge surface area for muscle attachment so that when you're flapping those wings, all those pectoral muscles can attach to the surface area. Here's a beautiful bald eagle. Many birds have divided clavicles that called wishbones. So those wishbones have been fused and divided together. And lastly, we get to our mammals. So mammals are incredible. They have hair. They are warm, so they're going to be endothermic. They have specialized secretory glands. Sebaceous glands produce oil. Eccrine glands produce sweat. Apocrine glands produce scent. And mammary glands produce milk. This is one of the key features of mammals, that they produce milk for their young. So most mammals are lactose intolerant as adults, including cats. So if you've ever offered your cat milk, it probably upset its tummy a little bit. Humans seem to be the only type of mammal that some of us, not most of us, the majority cannot do this, but can consume milk as an adult. Mammals also have ear bones that have been modified for hearing. Their teeth indicate their diet. We'll talk about that in a second. And they have a 4-chambered heart. If we think about how incredibly diverse they are, there's still only 5,200 species. So one of our favorite groups, because it has things like domestic cats, here's Parker and Max, but not a very large group. Mammals are divided into a couple different groups. One is monotremes. Monotremes are the platypus and the echidnas. They lay leathery eggs, so they don't have live birth, but they have all the other characteristics, and they do not have teeth, which is interesting. There's only 5 species of monotremes. Then we have marsupials. Marsupials are going to be kangaroos, koalas, Tasmanian devils, and the one that we have in North America, the opossum. So cute little opossum. This is our one species. Their embryo continues development inside a pouch called a marsupial pouch. And they do have live births, so they're not laying eggs like monotremes. There's only 330 species of these, most of them in Australia. I have a little video for you I'm going to put on Blackboard about how koalas were used in Jurassic Park. Then we get to our true beasts. Some of these words are really difficult for me to say, and so I'm going to let you pronounce them to yourself. But these true beasts are placental mammals. So they're going to utilize a placenta. This is most of the mammals, about 6,000 species. Here we have our phylogenetic tree. We can see mammals with a placenta are divided into 2 groups. These groups are based on where they were originally thought to be found. So we have Atlantogenata, that's going to be around the Atlantic Ocean, and then Borreo meaning northern. Those are the true beasts of the north. Each of those is divided even further. So the Atlantogenata are going to be grouped into organisms that are native to Africa, such as elephants and hyraxes and manatees. And then we have the animals that are native to the Americans, Americas, not Americans, that's North and South and Central America. Those are going to be the anteaters, armadillos, and sloths. And then from the northern areas, we're going to have our true rulers. This contains primates. Go ahead and take a moment and try and say this word to yourself. Remember, pronounce every vowel. and just feel super confident about it. And if anyone corrects you, that's okay. These are hard words to say. And we also have our animals that are in the placental group that were native to Laurasia. Laurasia was a supercontinent that existed probably about 200 million years ago. So these developed in this continent here. The other option would be Gondwana. So in these two groups, we're going to divide our mammals even further. We're going to have Rodentia, which are mice, rats, squirrels, porcupines, everything that we think is a rodent. Then we're going to have our rabbits, Lagomorpha, rabbits and hares. And we're going to have our primates, monkeys, apes, and humans. In this group, we also have tree shrews. So that's pretty cool. Then in the secondary group of placental mammals, we're going to have our horses and rhinos. We're going to have cows, giraffes, pigs, hippos, and whales. So dactyla refers to feet, and syntartiodactyla is related to a certain type of bone found in the feet of all these different animals. We were surprised that whales would be in this, so that was really interesting. We started figuring out the evolution of whales, which we will talk about later. Then we have carnivora. These are based on teeth, so these are going to have carnivorous teeth. They're going to be cats and dogs and bears. Bears themselves are omnivores. They will eat berries as well, but they have carnivorous teeth. And then we have flying bats and foxes. Vertebrates with the P refers to wings, and Chiro refers to spine. So Chiroptera are going to be flying mammals because they have wings attached to their spine. Here we have the American pika, often pronounced pika. And this is a really cute little rodent that lives in our area that we have to talk about because it's ecologically important and endangered. The Oregon Zoo does a really good job with the pika watch, where they try and determine how the populations are doing. Are they stable? Are they decreasing? Are they increasing? So if you're into adorable little critters, you could get involved with that volunteer work. And then the last thing to talk about with vertebrates is a reading recommendation. So this is one of the best books I read of 2025. It's called Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Billion Years of Human Evolution. And it's by Kat Bohannon. And in this book, the development and function of the placenta is discussed through an evolutionary history. Fascinating, just wonderful. Highly recommended, super good. I hope that was interesting. Practice saying all those wonderful Latin words and email me if any questions. We'll talk soon. Bye.